If you ever struggle starting your downswing correctly in the right sequence, or you feel like you rush your downswing, this video is really going to help you. Make sure you check it out. Welcome back to the TruGolf Academy. You've joined me, Jon Watts, today in our indoor studio. And today's video, as I mentioned there in the intro, is all going to be about starting your downswing correctly. Starting with the lower body first, getting the right sequence. And this is going to be really relevant if you feel like you've got too much tightness, tension, if you're really lunging for the golf ball with your upper body at the start of the downswing, ever struggling with that out to in swing path, this video is going to be really relevant for you. I'm going to show you a simple drill, something you can do at home or on the driving range, and a feel you can take to the golf course to improve your game straight away. The info for me is just coming on the bottom of the screen, so if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing. At least 2 instructional videos a week. Right now, we're going to jump into this one. So what I was getting the feel of there by doing a lead arm only swing, so that is my left hand for me as a right-handed golfer, is I was trying to get the sensation that my arms were dropping before I added in rotation, okay? And as I was allowing this arm to drop, I was trying to feel like I started with my lower body first. So rather than actually focusing on starting with our knees or our hips, I get a lot of success, and that is the right way, but I get a lot of success actually asking people to delay their upper body, which actually gets them to use their lower body first. So we want in the sequence events, as we start the downswing, our knee, then our hip to start to rotate and apply pressure down into that lead side. Then we want our core to start to turn, then our torso, our shoulder, our elbow, our hand, in that order. Are we thinking about it in the actual golf swing? Of course not. But when we're breaking down a movement, or if you've developed the wrong sequence, I'd encourage you to break that sequence by doing some drills, some exercises. So with lead arm only there, I really felt like I couldn't rush it with my upper body. And you saw that I was actually holding my lead arm with my trail arm. And I was trying to just get the sensation that the arm was dropping rather than the arm moving a long way in front of us. Now the reality is our arm should move slightly out in front of us to allow the club shaft to shallow, but there's a difference between slightly in front of us and what we see as a fault with a lot of golfers where the arms work too far out in front of them and then they end up having to cut inwards across the ball, hence that term out to in. And we tend to see pulls, fades, slices from that type of movement. So people struggling with the poor sequence are really rushing to hit the golf ball with that upper body. And we see a lot of the times that as we start the downswing, the upper body and lower body move at the same time rather than the lower body first. It's only fractions, you know, but if that little fraction does help or does really help us make the right movement. So we're trying to get that sensation of our arms dropping before we turn, before we add that rotation. And it's very much for me a dropping movement rather than pulling. So I get a lot of golfers who pull down from the top, and as they pull down, their hands get inwards, the shaft gets very steep, very vertical, and they're the kind of golfer who feels stuck and tries to get out their own way. So it's definitely a sensation of allowing the arms to drop into this position. You'll see there my arms have got out in front of me. By the time I come into impact, my lead arm is almost vertical. I don't want my arms too far out in front of me. I don't want them inwards here. So they're almost hanging down from my shoulder joint. A little bit out is fine. We just don't want excessive movements one way or the other. So we're trying to get the sensation of allowing that lead arm to drop to start to unwind the lower body. Now that is it's a tough exercise, and you may just do it without hitting the golf ball. You may do it off a small tee. I was actually quite happy with that one. I don't know how far it went, but relatively on target, but that's, you know, beside the point. I'm trying to get that feeling, as I said, of allowing the arm to drop before I add turn. And of course, as my arm's dropping here, my lower body is starting to work. So as an exercise, you may just feel like your lower body starts and your arms are being left behind. And I have done some videos on that before, so I'll put a couple of links here that are well worth checking out on a similar subject about leaving the arms up to start the downswing, how we start that downswing correctly. So I'll put one link in here about starting to focus on the lower body, and obviously one about delaying the upper body. Try both, see what suits you. What's best for your game is going to be different to someone else. There's no right or wrong there. It absolutely should be from the ground up. We all agree with that, but how we achieve it you know, there's some different ideas and thoughts out there, so I'll give you a couple of mine. But I'm going to get that feel. I'm going to try one more, doing the left arm, the lead arm only, of allowing the arm to drop before I add in rotation. If it just drops with no rotation, you would see that I'm going to contact the ground very early. So when I add that rotation, that's causing that, or allowing the club to get towards about the golf ball before it hits the ground rather than striking the ground early. So it's dropping and turning, okay? And as that happens, my lower body is actually racing a little bit ahead of my upper half. Okay, so I've got the feeling of allowing the arms to drop before I added in rotation. Yes, it was a bit thin. I wouldn't worry about the result. How are we going to take that as a feel to the golf course? We're going to, if this is an area you struggle with, almost get the sensation of waiting for it, almost building up or gathering momentum. So I want you to feel a little bit slower here. So the speed's more down the bottom end. So it's going to be feeling a little bit slower in the transition, and the speed more into impact. When you see golfers, and not everybody's the same, but when you see those golfers who you feel on the TV are quite effortless, they're obviously not. They are generating power, but they're generating power at the right point. They're not losing speed and energy somewhere here at the top of the backswing transition. So allow that momentum to gather up. I'm going to feel like I'm slower in the transition. So I felt like I waited for it, slower, and then the speed was down the bottom half into impact. And I can build that up. I probably did take a touch of pace out of it, but it's still a 7-iron that's gone sort of 163. I'd normally carry it just probably about 10 yards further than that, but I'm over-feeling or over-exaggerating it to start with. I can add more speed in there, but I'm going to get that sensation of wait for it in the transition and then speed into impact. One last one. Added a little bit more rotational speed, I think, there on the way through. Yeah, that's more like it in terms of yardage for me. So 7-iron, it's gone about 170. So landing at 165, 170, something on those lines. Still on target, still felt very smooth, deliberate in that transition, almost like I waited for the club, and that starts to mean I'm utilizing my lower body just a little bit more efficiently, starting to get my lower body starting the downswing rather than my upper body rushing towards the golf ball. As I mentioned at the start, if this video has helped, I'd love to hear, so just put some comments below, any videos you'd like me to film. It's also a good place to get in touch. If you haven't already, as I mentioned at the start, hit the thumbs up, share with as many golfers as you can, and don't forget to subscribe.